She was just a homeless woman until she comforted the wrong boy and the millionaire saw everything. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, where are you watching this story from? I'd love to know how far our stories are reaching. And if you love emotional love stories full of overcoming hardships and heartwarming endings, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That helps us a lot to keep our content growing and reaching more people. The sky over Chicago was dawning in shades of gray, as if reflecting the city's state of mind. It was a cold, damp, and biting late autumn morning, the kind that made the mirrored buildings seem even more distant from the ground where those who had nothing walked. Between the silent avenues and the bulletproof cars of those who never looked sideways, a solitary figure walked, trying to seem invisible. Lauren Hayes clutched her worn-out coat tighter around her thin body, trying to keep out the cold seeping through the seams. Her ripped jeans and faded sneakers barely protected her feet from the mist gathered on the sidewalks. Her light brown hair was tied in a messy bun, and her very pale face revealed sleepless nights and aimless days. She didn't beg, she just walked. Because for someone with no home, standing still was being too vulnerable. Her eyes searched for something familiar, an unguarded park bench, a coffee donation spot, maybe a glance that didn't judge. But what she found was something else, a sound, a muffled cry. She frowned, stopping. The sound was close, fragile, almost silent, like someone trying not to be heard. She walked slowly toward one of the plazas in Grant Park, stepping over fallen leaves and wet benches. And then she saw him. Huddled against the trunk of a thick tree, there was a little boy alone. He couldn't be more than 5. Very fair skin, blonde hair falling over tear-filled eyes, and cheeks red from the cold. He wore a navy blue coat and wool pants, but his leather shoes were soaked, and his eyes were begging for help. Lauren froze, her heart raced. A child that small, alone, in a place like that? It was dangerous even for adults. She looked around. No adults nearby, no security, no nanny. No parked cars. Nothing. She took 2 hesitant steps. "Hey, are you lost?" she asked softly, like someone speaking to a wounded bird. The boy didn't answer. He only shut his eyes tighter, as if afraid of being punished just for existing. He cried silently, but the tears flowed freely. Lauren knelt down carefully, keeping some distance. She knew her scared appearance might be intimidating. Her hands were dirty, her nails broken, and the worn-out coat carried more scars than fabric. "It's okay. I won't hurt you. I just want to help. Nothing." She took a deep breath. She remembered an old song she used to sing to her students in a life that now felt like it belonged to someone else. A simple tune about a little bunny who got lost and found shelter in the arms of someone kind. And she began to sing. Her voice was low, a bit hoarse, but there was tenderness in it, the kind that disarms. The boy slowly raised his face. His blue eyes met hers. There was fear, but also curiosity. And then, as if something invisible pulled him, he moved closer, and a bit closer, until his small body leaned against her knee. Lauren felt a lump form in her throat. "Do you want me to keep going?" she whispered. The boy nodded, barely noticeably. She sang a little more, and suddenly, without warning, he curled up in her lap, as if looking for shelter. As if in that moment, Lauren's thin body and wounded soul were the only safe harbor he needed. She held him gently. She could feel the little body trembling in her arms. It wasn't just the cold. It was fear, loneliness, helplessness. "You're safe now," she said, resting her chin on the top of his head. "I'm here, okay? I'm right here." Sitting on the frozen ground of a forgotten plaza, with an unknown child falling asleep in her arms. Lauren had no idea she had just taken in the son of one of the most powerful and most unreachable men in all of Chicago. Nor that, by doing so, her whole life was about to change. Time felt suspended in that cold, damp square. Lauren was still holding the boy in her arms, as if her fragile and unknown body were the only shield between him and the world. She didn't know who he was, or what would happen next. But there was something in that hug, silent, pure, necessary, that she would never forget. She was staring at the ground, humming softly, when a distant voice snapped her back. "Is anyone seeing this?" murmured a man in a leather jacket, holding his phone, standing just a few feet away. He frowned, suspicious. He began recording from a distance without approaching. A homeless woman with a kid dressed like he walked out of a Ralph Lauren ad. "This is wrong." He recorded for 30 seconds and posted it to social media with the caption, "Urgent, homeless. Woman seen with unknown child in public park. Kidnapping, negligence. Where are the parents?" The video started gaining views within seconds. On neighborhood groups, community watch apps, gossip forums. The comments came like stones thrown by strangers. "Poor kid. Call the police now. Looks like a kidnapping. Definitely a scam to milk money from the rich." Across the city, in a silent, cold penthouse made of glass and concrete, Nathan Caldwell's phone buzzed. He was watching a recording of a board meeting when his assistant burst into the room with a tablet in hand. "Mr. Caldwell, there's a video going viral. The boy, he looks exactly like Ethan." Nathan grabbed the tablet, and as he pressed play, his gray-green eyes narrowed. His blood ran cold. He recognized his son's coat. He recognized the face. And he also recognized the woman holding him. The same woman he had ordered to be investigated. The same woman he had suspected from the start might be up to something. Find them immediately. I want a team there in 5 minutes. Back in the park, Lauren didn't even notice the commotion around her. A police cruiser approached silently. Right behind it, 2 blacked-out cars parked at the curb. From them stepped 2 men in tailored suits, wearing earpieces. One looked at his phone, confirmed the boy's face, and strode toward them. "Ma'am, release the child immediately." Lauren turned, startled. Still kneeling, she gently pulled the boy closer, trying to shield him from the sudden fear. "He was alone. Now," barked the other man, yanking Ethan with force. The boy, silent until then, screamed. "No, no, no." Lauren jumped to her feet. "Don't pull him like that. He's scared. He trusted me." But it was too late. In seconds, she was surrounded. One of the bodyguards grabbed her arm, and a police officer approached with handcuffs in hand. "You're under arrest on suspicion of child abduction," he said, snapping the cuffs on tightly. Lauren felt the tears well up, but kept her posture firm. "You're making a mistake. I was just trying to help." A crowd had started to form. People filming, commenting, pointing. Strangers who hadn't seen how the boy got to her, now judging with raised fingers. Another opportunist, trying to get attention. A woman muttered in the background. The officer pushed her toward the police car. "You didn't even listen to me. He was lost. Alone. The boy, now in a bodyguard's arms, struggled violently. His eyes wide, cheeks flushed, breath short. "Lauren!" He cried with all his might. "Don't hurt her." The world stopped. The guards looked at each other. The police officer, surprised, slowed his pace. Lauren froze. Ethan reached his arms out to her, fighting to break free. It was the first time he'd spoken since he lost his mother. And he spoke for her. Scene went viral within minutes. First, among those seeking justice. Then, among those seeking scandal. And finally, among those who could no longer tell one from the other, but above them all, one man was watching it live. In the armored car, On the way to the precinct, Nathan Caldwell pressed his lips tight. The tablet in his hand still showed the video of his son speaking those words, with strength, with pain, with hope. Don't hurt her. And for the first time in a long while, Nathan didn't feel in control. He felt guilty and afraid that he'd already done something he couldn't undo. The police station felt colder than the street outside. The echo of footsteps on white-tiled floors and grimy beige walls reverberated like hollow voices in a place that rarely heard the truth. Lauren sat in a gray plastic chair, handcuffed, wrists marked, eyes fixed on the floor. The officer who had brought her in still wore a rain-soaked uniform, and the waiting room smelled of damp paper and burnt coffee. She didn't cry. Life on the streets had taught her that tears only slowed your thinking. But the silence around her was crueler than shouting. Not one officer had listened to her so far. No one cared about what had happened before the recording. She was just another strange body in the system, with the face of a nobody and the piven and defenfen history of someone invisible. Full name? Asked the desk officer, not even looking up from her screen. Lauren Hayes. Got ID? No. Address? It varies. The woman finally looked up. You live on the street? If that's what you want to call it. Anyone we can contact? Family? Lawyer? No. The officer typed something, sighed, and motioned for her to be taken to the holding room. Lauren walked with steady steps, even though her legs trembled. The metal door clanged shut behind her with a sound that felt like a sentence. Being sealed across the city, in a black SUV with tinted windows, Nathan Caldwell clenched his jaw tightly. His hands rested, tense, on his knees, and his breathing was shallow. He hadn't said a word since the driver had informed him that the woman was in custody. She was found holding your son, Mr. Caldwell. Standard procedure, given the circumstances. The police chief had explained on the phone. My son spoke to her. Do you understand what that means? Nathan had replied, his voice like ice. It means the case is more delicate than it looks. When he arrived at the precinct, Nathan didn't wait for an escort. He walked in alone, cutting through the room with an imposing presence that silenced every corner. The police chief met him with formality and caution. Everyone knew who Nathan Caldwell was. She's in holding. We're investigating the circumstances. Circumstances? Nathan raised an eyebrow. She was holding a crying child, comforting him. And you still cuffed her in front of him. The video looked suspicious. She had no ID. Protocol had to be followed. Nathan walked to the glass window looking into the room where Lauren was held. She saw him before he said a word. She stood slowly, keeping her dignity even with her hands bound. He entered. The door closed behind him. The air grew heavy. The two of them stood face to face in a long, tense silence. He scanned her. Wet clothes, hollow eyes, wrists red from the cuffs. You knew who he was? He asked. No, she replied without hesitation. Then what were you doing with him? Why was he in your arms? You was alone, crying, soaked, scared, and no one did anything. She lifted her eyes to meet his, steady. I just stayed. With him, that's it. Nathan exhaled sharply, battling rage, frustration, shame. You didn't call for help? Didn't look for an officer, security, anyone? And who would listen to someone like me? She answered, without raising her voice. He swallowed hard. He had no reply. My son spoke to you, he said. Defended you. Lauren nodded. I know. He hasn't spoken since his mother died. Maybe because no one's really listened to him since then. At that moment, the door burst open. A police officer brought Ethan in his arms. But the boy jumped down before he could be held. He ran to Lauren, eyes wet, face red, body shaking. Lauren, he cried. Don't let them take you. Please. Don't let them." She knelt down slowly despite her bound wrists. The boy threw himself into her arms. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here." Nathan stood motionless, watching the scene. His throat tightened, eyes misting, but he wouldn't allow himself to cry. Not there. The police chief stepped closer, quietly, observing the undeniable bond. "Mr. Caldwell, the boy clearly feels safe with her. The decision is yours." Nathan closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his voice came out low. "But—" "Steady. Remove her cuffs." Now, Lauren didn't thank him, and he didn't expect her to. But when her wrists were freed and Ethan took her hands, Nathan felt something inside him break, and at the same time, begin again. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. The room, once filled with accusations and suspicion, now hung suspended, like air too heavy to breathe. Nathan didn't take his eyes off his son, standing there, holding the hand of a woman in rags, a woman he would have had removed from the sidewalk without a second thought just hours earlier. Lauren said nothing either. Her green eyes were glassy but steady, refusing to bend beneath the weight of anyone's doubt. Ethan wouldn't let go of her hand. Nathan cleared his throat, regaining his composure. "Take off the cuffs," he ordered, voice low and cold. But not harsh. The officer hesitated. "Are you sure, Mr. Caldwell? She's not a threat." The cuffs clicked open with a metallic snap. Lauren drew her wrist to her chest, rubbing the reddened skin quietly. She still didn't trust any of it, and who could blame her? Nathan stepped closer, stopping directly in front of her. There was no anger in his eyes anymore, just confusion. "And disbelief? You knew who he was?" he asked again. "No," she replied firmly, "and it wouldn't have made a difference. He spoke to you. He hasn't said a word since his mother's funeral. Not to me. Not to therapists. Not even to his grandmother." Lauren held his gaze, not with defiance, but with painful honesty. "Sometimes we just need to be heard, even if no words are spoken." Nathan stepped back. For the first time in a long while, he had no comeback. He was a businessman, used to managing risks, outcomes, manipulating narratives. But what had happened here didn't fit any corporate logic. Hours later, outside the precinct, the press had already gathered. Photographers pushed against barricades, their flashes like a storm of judgment. Nathan ignored them all. He'd arranged for Ethan to be taken home quietly and sent a short message to his lawyer. Drop the charges, now. He remained on the steps, watching as Lauren melted into the crowd. She didn't apologize. She didn't thank him. She just walked away, head held high, like someone who had long since learned that not all freedom comes with justice. Next morning, Nathan woke early, something he hadn't done willingly since burying his wife. The full video from the station had already leaked. In the comments, the tide had turned. Thousands were now defending Lauren, moved by the moment Ethan spoke his first words in months. The entire country seemed torn between shame and awe. The narrative had flipped, but Nathan didn't trust narratives. He trusted facts. "Find out who she is," he told his personal assistant. "Everything. Full name, background, where she lived, who she knew, if she's ever lied, been arrested. No speculation, just facts." The assistant nodded and vanished down the hall. Hours later, the file was in Nathan's hands. Her name was Lauren Hayes. 26 years old, former early childhood teacher. Bachelor's degree in education from a community college. Fired 2 years ago after reporting a sexual harassment case involving her superior. With no institutional support, she filed a lawsuit and lost. Evicted months later, lived in shelters, then on the streets. No criminal record, never arrested, no living relatives, no complaints filed against her. Nothing that justified the Label Nathan himself had almost branded her with dot. All he found was a palado. Nathan himself had almost branded her with dot. All he found was buscado was a musbam. With data Wisconsin was a badminton himself had almost branded himself. Painful trail of closed doors. Nathan flipped through the report in silence. Near the end, a scanned document caught his eye. An old letter Lauren had submitted to the school's HR department. The handwriting was firm, the words sharp. A cry for help. Ignored dot, he closed the file harder than necessary. There she was. A woman who had lost everything for telling the truth, and still sang to a lost child in a public park. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk, head in his hands. For the first time in years, it wasn't Ethan's silence that haunted him, it was his own. Snow had begun to fall again, covering the low rooftops in a thin, silent layer. The afternoon light in Chicago was dim, filtered through dense clouds. Lauren sat on the floor of a community shelter beside an old electric heater that barely warmed the air. Several other women lay on makeshift mattresses, some rocking small children, others utterly silent, as if the cold had frozen their words too. She was folding donated clothes, trying to keep her mind busy when the front door creaked open. Sound of leather shoes on worn flooring didn't belong in that place. Lauren looked up and froze. Nathan Caldwell. Impeccable in a black overcoat, crisp gray shirt underneath, and the impassive stare of someone who had never stepped into a place like that before, and clearly hadn't planned to. All the women noticed his presence. One of them whispered, "That's the boy's father, the one from the video." Lauren stood slowly, shoulders tense. "You shouldn't be here," she said firmly, still feeling the invisible burn of the handcuffs on her wrists. "I didn't come to apologize." He replied bluntly, "I figured." He stepped forward, scanning the space around him with a mix of discomfort and fascination. He looked out of place, even fragile, though he didn't show it. "My son asked about you last night, and again this morning. He wants to know if he'll see you again." Lauren crossed her arms, trying to suppress the emotion rising in her chest. "He's just a lonely kid. It'll pass." "It hasn't. Not in 8 months." She swallowed hard, eyes misty. "What do you want, Nathan?" He inhaled deeply, like someone forcing himself to do something he couldn't quite name. "I want to offer you a deal." Lauren raised an eyebrow. "What kind of deal?" "You stay at my house for a few days. With Ethan, under supervision. Psychologists will be present. Nothing will be forced. I want to understand why you have this effect on him." "In return?" "In return?" She asked, wary. "I'll help you start over. A decent place to live, documentation, education, maybe even a job." Lauren stared at him. For a moment, everything inside her screamed to say no. Pride, hurt, the fear of being used again. But Ethan's face flashed through her mind, those little eyes asking for something the whole world had denied him. Affection with no strings attached. "You want to buy my affection?" She asked, voice catching. "No," he said, hesitating for the first time. "I want to understand how you gave my son what even I couldn't." The shelter was completely silent now. Everyone was listening. All waited for her answer. Lauren looked around, the peeling paint, the smell of reheated soup, the pile of donated clothes in the corner. None of it was home. It was survival. And as much as it hurt to admit, maybe accepting that offer was the only way to help Ethan, and maybe herself too. "I don't trust you," she said firmly. "I don't trust me either," he replied, almost in a whisper. She took a deep breath. "Let me be clear. I'm not a test subject. And I'm not going to smile just because you gave me a warm mattress." Nathan nodded. "You have my word." Lauren hesitated a few seconds more before saying, in a quiet but resolute tone, "Then, I accept." His face remained still, but behind the rigid posture was something he couldn't quite hide. Relief. And as Lauren walked away from the shelter without looking back, she had no idea that this seemingly simple agreement would spark a change, not just in the mansion where Ethan lived, but in everything Nathan Caldwell thought he knew about control, family, and redemption. The Caldwell mansion stood on a hill outside Chicago, surrounded by tall pines and discreetly guarded walls. Its facade was pale stone, with wide windows revealing a quiet, almost solemn interior. As Lauren stepped inside, she felt as though she were entering a world where even the air was curated. The marble floor gleamed. Antique furniture looked untouched, and the silence, it was thick, broken only by the ticking of a century-old clock in the main hallway. The housekeeper, a thin, stern-faced woman named Mrs. Whitaker, greeted her with the same expression one might give a misplaced insect. She wore a stiff gray uniform and spoke in a clipped, rushed tone. "Your room is the last door on the right down the service corridor. You will not have access to the upper floor, Mr. Caldwell's office, or the guest wing. Meals will be left in the pantry. And please, don't touch anything." Lauren simply nodded. She had long since learned that sometimes silence was the safest shield against judgments disguised as rules. In the first few days, she kept her interactions limited to supervised playtime with Ethan. The boy was still shy, but little by little, he opened up and even smiled. Lauren would hum softly as they built block towers on the nursery rug, and he began repeating short words: ball, sing, more. One evening, as the boy was drawing, Lauren commented gently, "You really like blue, don't you? Your shirt, the crayon, the wall ... all blue." Ethan replied in a whisper, eyes gleaming. It was Mommy's favorite color. Lauren froze. A chill ran down her spine. She didn't know much about Nathan's late wife, only that she had died months before. But the way Ethan said "Mommy," as if it were a hidden treasure, said more than any newspaper article ever could. That night, while in the laundry room, Lauren overheard two staff members whispering. "They say she didn't fall down those stairs on her own. I heard they fought a lot. She wanted out of the marriage." Mr. Caldwell was never home, always traveling. Lauren slipped away silently, her stomach tight. Something in that mansion felt too heavy to be just grief. It was guilt. The next day, Nathan appeared in the garden. He had just ended a tense phone call, jaw clenched, phone still in hand. He stopped when he saw Lauren on the lawn, with Ethan asleep in her lap. "Did you find anything out?" he asked suddenly, his tone curt. She looked up slowly. "I'm not here to investigate your life, Nathan, but you heard things, didn't you?" "I did, but I didn't judge. Not you, not her." He said nothing, then looked down. His hands were trembling. "I wasn't home," he confessed quietly. "The day she fell, I should have been. She called me 3 times that afternoon. I ignored them." Lauren wanted to say something, but she didn't, because sometimes the most healing thing isn't filling the silence, it's respecting it. In the days that followed, her bond with Ethan deepened. He began speaking full sentences with her, asked her to put him to bed, wanted her to read to him, asked her to sing. The housekeeper watched all of it with increasing discomfort, as if Lauren's presence disturbed an invisible hierarchy. "You're overstepping boundaries that aren't yours," Mrs. Whitaker snapped one evening in the hallway. Lauren simply replied, "Maybe the real problem is no one ever crossed the right boundaries for him." The woman scowled and walked off without another word, but the discomfort began to grow, like a shadow creeping through the hallways. And deep down, Lauren knew, in places where everything looked too clean, it was usually because the dirt was buried very, very deep. The next morning, the sky over Chicago was shrouded in heavy clouds, and the wind carried with it something that felt like a warning. Inside the mansion, everything moved with the same quiet, immaculate rhythm as always, but something invisible had begun to rot within those walls. Lauren woke to the sound of soft laughter coming from the room next door. Ethan. He was giggling with a rare kind of joy, trying to mimic a song she had sung the night before. It was the first time she'd heard him laugh like that. His spontaneous happiness filled the hallway, with a kind of life that had long been missing from that place. But not everyone was willing to accept this change. Mrs. Whitaker watched from a distance, arms crossed, eyes narrowed, as though each of Ethan's smiles was a personal offense. To her, Lauren was nothing but an intruder, a woman with no class, no pedigree, who now sat on the family sofa, read bedtime stories to the Caldwell heir, and was received with a complicit silence by Nathan. That's when Mrs. Whitaker had what she deemed a necessary idea. That afternoon, under the pretext of organizing the office files, she accessed the mansion's internal camera system. She captured carefully chosen stills, Lauren and Ethan playing in the garden while Nathan looked on from the balcony. Lauren handing him a cup of tea in the living room. A moment where Nathan gently touched her shoulder in thanks. None of the images were inappropriate, but the right angle, paired with a toxic caption, was enough. By the end of the day, the story had been planted. Former homeless woman seduces millionaire boss and tries to replace late wife. Read the scandalous headline on the most read blog among the city's elite. The images were accompanied by vicious speculation fed by internal sources. Lauren read the article while sitting in the mansion's kitchen. The words flashed before her eyes like knives. Sources claimed the young woman had a questionable past and used the widower's child to get close to Nathan Caldwell. Her stomach turned. "I never," she murmured, hands trembling. Before she could run upstairs and speak to Nathan, two of the mansion's security guards cornered her. "Mr. Caldwell has asked that you leave immediately," one said, not meeting her eyes. "Does he know?" she asked, pain breaking through her voice. "Did he see what they posted?" "We weren't given permission to discuss, only to escort you to the gate." Ethan, who had just come down the stairs holding a book, froze when he saw the scene. "Lauren?" She tried to smile, though her eyes were red. "It's okay, Ethan. Just a misunderstanding. I have to go." The boy ran to her, grabbing her hand tightly. "Don't go," he pleaded, tears welling up in his eyes. "You promised." Lauren knelt down, hugging him tight. "I didn't want to. But sometimes people make decisions before they hear the truth. Talk to my dad," he begged. "Please talk to him." She shook her head. "They wouldn't let me. But you have to be strong, okay? None of this is your fault." Ethan clung to her, and when the guards began to pull her away, he cried out, "Dad, don't let them. Please." But Nathan never appeared. Hours later, as silence once again settled over the house, Ethan sat on the floor of his room with the book still in his lap. He stared at the door, and he didn't say a single word for the rest of the day. Not the next day. Not the day after that. Lauren, outside once again, was alone. But this time, she carried a new kind of pain. The pain of being torn from the one place where someone, even briefly, had made her feel like she was still seen as human. The light rain trickled down Lauren's shoulders as she wandered aimlessly along the dark sidewalks of Chicago. The coat she'd gotten from the shelter no longer kept her warm, and the worn solace of her boots let the cold water in. Her light brown hair, now messy and damp, clung to her face. The glances from passers-by were sharper now, different from before. Now, everyone recognized her. Some whispered, "That's the woman from the scandal, the one who tried to seduce the millionaire father." Others simply stepped out of her path. The headline was still alive across social media. A decontextualized photo circulated on blogs, WhatsApp groups, even local news pages. From beggar to manipulator, the woman who nearly fooled all of Chicago. Not one word of hers had been heard. Not one chance for defense. Lauren had tried returning to the shelter. She was turned away at the door. "We can't get involved, Lauren. The board's concerned about the institution's reputation," said the coordinator, avoiding her gaze. "You'll need to find somewhere else." She didn't beg, didn't plead. Just walked away, hands in her pockets, head down. Within days, everything she'd built had vanished. The small shred of respect, the flicker of hope, even the fragile feeling that maybe she'd been starting over. Now there was only emptiness, a silence that heard more than words ever could. Back in Ethan's room, a different kind of silence had taken root. Thicker, heavier. The boy had stopped speaking. The same day Lauren was taken away. He refused food, wouldn't leave his room, wouldn't meet his father's eyes. He spent hours curled up on the floor, holding one of the books Lauren used to read to him. In a fetal position. Nathan watched from the doorway, increasingly powerless. Ethan. He tried one night, kneeling beside his son. "Son, listen to me. She didn't do anything to hurt you. I thought I was protecting you." No response. No glance. Nathan shut his eyes tightly. He stood slowly, as if his legs were made of lid, and walked to his office. The mansion was dead quiet. All the staff knew. Their employer's temper had become unbearable. Deep down, he knew. He'd seen it in his son's eyes, the way the boy had been unraveling, piece by piece. And for the second time, he had been the cause. The first with his wife. The second with the only person who had brought color back to Ethan's world. On the computer screen still open in front of him was Lauren's file. He had read and reread it dozens of times. Everything was there. The ignored harassment complaint, the lost lawsuit, the evictions, the time in shelters, but not a single lie. Nathan rubbed his eyes, exhaling shakily. "I got it all wrong." Again, he whispered to himself. That night, Lauren slept slumped against a concrete wall, shielded by a garbage bag and a damp blanket she'd found. She trembled, not just from cold, but from exhaustion, from betrayal, from a sadness that didn't even have a name. She looked up at the overcast sky and whispered, "Why did I believe? Why did I let myself be fooled again?" No answer came, but somewhere across the city, a rich and powerful man was finally feeling the weight of something money could never buy, nor replace, and while both of them sank deeper into their silent hells, fate was already, quietly, patiently, preparing the moment that would bring them back together and change everything. Nathan's phone rang incessantly atop the dark mahogany desk. He had already declined 8 calls in less than an hour. Investors were demanding answers about his heir's erratic behavior. Reporters hounded him about the scandal, and partners threatened to intervene in the family foundation's leadership if the Caldwell name kept being dragged through tabloid headlines. But none of it mattered at that moment. Nathan sat on the leather couch in his office, head in his hands, eyes sunken from too many sleepless nights. In recent weeks, Ethan had regressed more than the doctors thought possible. He stopped speaking, refused to eat alone, wouldn't leave his room. And now he wouldn't let anyone near him, not nannies, not therapists, not even his father. Just once, Lauren, the therapist had said during her last visit, her tone tinged with weary sympathy. And Mr. Caldwell, the issue isn't only what she caused in him, it's what she awakened. That sentence wouldn't leave his mind. That same night, Nathan had another nightmare. He dreamed of his wife's funeral, but this time it wasn't her in the casket. It was Lauren, lying still, her face calm, surrounded by whispers of scorn and judgment. Ethan sobbed uncontrollably, and Nathan, paralyzed, couldn't move to reach him. He woke drenched in sweat, breathless, and, for the first time in years, he felt fear. Real fear. The next morning he took the car alone. No driver, no security. Just his coat thrown over his shoulders and his eyes locked on Chicago's gray horizon. He searched for her in places he'd never set foot. Cold corners, abandoned shelters, empty parks, community kitchens. When he found her, it was by chance, or maybe fate. Lauren was huddled beneath the awning of a defunct laundromat. Curled under a tattered blanket, she was reading a crumpled food donation flyer, her dirty hands gripping the edges like an anchor. Her eyes, when they saw him, didn't widen. They locked on his, as if silently asking what more he had come to take. Nathan stopped in front of her, and for the first time, bowed his head. "I have no justifications," he said, voice low and trembling. "No excuses. Only one request, and it's not for me." Lauren didn't reply. She waited. "It's Ethan. He's getting worse. He won't eat, won't speak. He wants you. And I failed him again." She looked down at her knees. Her expression held something bitter, as if she'd rehearsed this conversation countless times, alone in the cold silence of long nights. "You want me to come back?" she asked. "I want him to have you. And I want to try being someone he can respect." Lauren exhaled slowly. The wind stung her face, but the pain in her chest was worse. "I won't accept money or promises or favors. I'm only coming back for him, and under one condition." Nathan nodded. "Respect," she said. "The bare minimum any human being deserves. If you ever look at me again like you did when you accused me, I won't stay." Nathan stepped closer. His eyes glistened, but he no longer hid his vulnerability. "You have my word." That same day, Lauren returned to the mansion. Not through the back door. Not hidden like a guest with no name. She was met by Ethan, arms wide, eyes full, like someone reclaiming something they thought was lost forever. "You really came back?" he whispered, his voice thick. She knelt and held him tight. "I did, and now I'm here to stay." The days that followed weren't magical. They were real. Lauren rediscovered her strength slowly as Ethan laughed more often, ate without coaxing, and slept without nightmares. At first, Nathan watched from a distance, unsure how to step into that kind of love. But then came the mornings, the shared lunches. One day, he sat on the floor beside them, helping with a puzzle. No suit, no phone, no facade. Lauren watched him from the corner of her eye, and something in him was shifting. "How do you do it?" he asked one afternoon as they watched Ethan draw on the patio with chalk. "Do what?" she asked. "Make everything feel lighter, even with all that pain inside you." She answered quietly, but with clarity. "Maybe because I never had the luxury of not feeling it." Nathan had no reply, but in that moment he understood. Lauren wasn't an exception. She was a mirror of everything he'd spent years avoiding, and strangely, she made him want to be better. Not for image, for truth. For the first time, he realized it wasn't her who needed him. It was he who needed her. The autumn sun bathed the city of Chicago in a calm golden light. It was a cold afternoon, yet serene, and the auditorium at John H. Adams Community College was full, not with celebrities or politicians, but with educators, social workers, journalists, and students from the reintegration program for formerly homeless individuals. A program that, not long ago, had been just another forgotten file in some dusty institutional drawer. At the center of the stage stood only a simple chair and a microphone. In front of it, a local journalist held a notepad. Behind, a screen displayed the event title, Stories That Heal, Invisible Scars, and New Beginnings. The most anticipated name of the day wasn't a politician or a CEO. It was hers, Lauren Hayes. She stepped onto the stage with steady but humble steps. She wore a modest petrol blue dress of soft fabric, and her light brown hair was tied in a low bun with a few loose strands framing her marked but serene face. No makeup, no glamour, only presence. Truth. In the front row, sitting side by side, were Ethan and Nathan. The boy beamed openly, his soft blonde hair combed to the side, wearing a tiny blue bow tie. Next to him, Nathan, now carrying a lighter expression, wore a gray sweater and dress pants. He was no longer the untouchable man in $1,000 suits. He was a father, a man rebuilding. The reporter asked the first question carefully, but directly. Lauren, what everyone here wants to understand is, how did you gain the trust of a child who hadn't spoken to anyone in months? She didn't answer right away. She took a deep breath. Her eyes scanned the audience and briefly settled on Ethan, who watched her, eyes glowing. I didn't gain his trust, she said, voice low but steady, and the room fell into complete silence. I just sat beside him. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't offer anything. I just stayed. And sometimes that's all a child needs. Someone who stays without demanding, without trying to shape them, without bargaining affection. The reporter scribbled notes, but the crowd barely breathed. Lauren continued. The truth is, when you have nothing, you learn to see what really matters. And when I looked at Ethan, I saw his pain, because it looked like mine. And I didn't try to fix him. I let him feel me, for real. No performance. No promises. She paused. Emotion was already welling up in the eyes of many. Sometimes, she added, voice glowing with quiet power, those who have the most are the ones who listen the least, because they try to fill every space with control, power, or appearance. But pain doesn't hear that. Pain hears presence, truth, and truth often comes from those the world chooses to ignore. The audience rose to their feet in applause. It wasn't applause for a performance. It was recognition, reverence. Later, in the campus garden, Lauren walked hand in hand with Ethan. He chatted excitedly about the drawings he wanted to show her and ran through the fallen leaves like any child his age. Nathan watched from a distance, a soft smile on his lips, wearing the look of a man who had finally begun to understand peace. Lauren had been accepted into a scholarship program for educators with backgrounds of homelessness. She would have a place to live, to study, and finally, to belong. She hadn't accepted Nathan's money, only a recommendation. The rest she would build with her own hands. Are you sure you don't want me to invest in this project with you? He asked one afternoon as the three of them shared hot chocolate in the Foundation's garden. Lauren looked at him gently. I'm sure what I needed from you, you already gave me. You listened, he nodded. And for the first time, he understood that he had been saved. Not by wealth, but by the woman he once judged without hearing. And there, in that golden late afternoon, with Ethan laughing freely, Lauren at peace, and Nathan with a lighter heart, there were no winners or losers. There were three lives that, by improbable paths, had found each other and healed together. And now, what did you think of this story? Leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments. I'd love to know how deeply this journey moved you. If this story touched your heart, give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one's. Before you go, I've picked another emotional story that will surely move you even more. It's right here next to you, and you won't want to miss it.